It's the Underdogs back with you. Another action-packed show. I'm Jordan Brenner, joined as always by Peter Keating. Peter, ready to talk some sports?
Ready to talk some sports, Jordan. I'm ready to go, and I want to thank you again for your in-depth analysis of the Westminster Dog Show last week because we got underdog results at the dog show. It was fantastic.
Yeah, a poodle won, which apparently there were dog rankings, which apparently only the New York Times had access to. It was a low-ranked dog, and the poodle won best in show.
Yeah, and for the first time ever, a mixed breed dog won something. A bitch named Nimble, title of my new book, won the agility category, which is great. We love mutts here at the Underdog Show.
Well, Peter, speaking of bitches, I'm excited to hear you bitch about your Timberwolves having collapsed.
Speaking
after
of
building
mutts, I'm glad to be here with you. Yes.
Let's talk some NBA, and then we're gonna get to some cool baseball stuff, and we got a PGA pick for each of us, which the fourth major as it is begins this week. But Peter, NBA playoffs, I think we've got three really excellent series, and then the Celtics and Cavs.
Yeah, Jordan, if you watched game 2 of the Nuggets Timberwolves series where Denver scored only 80 points, shot 30% from long range, it was easy for enthusiasts like myself to conclude that Minnesota had solved the Nuggets. But then Jokic won the MVP, got everybody saying, oh, it was really funny that he got the MVP in the middle of a series where they were losing, and decided they wouldn't lose anymore. And in fact, it is Jokic who has solved the Timberwolves, specifically Rudy Gobert. Jordan, in this most recent game, Jokic scored 20 points while Gobert was defending him, shooting 8 of 9. I lost track of the variety of ways he went to town on Gobert: finger rolls, bank shots, outside jumpers, up and unders. And while he was racking up his 40 points, he also passed all over the court and got 13 assists. And in a way that I'm not sure is true of the Knicks, it looks like the T-Wolves have given this their best shot. But what are they going to do? I mean, Denver's starting five is by far the best we've seen in a while over a multi-year period. And Jokic is a great, great, great player. And Mike Conley is hurt, and his replacements are not as good as I said they were. And, you know, Minnesota's probably better than they looked recently because Anthony Edwards missed 7 of 8 shots in the first half and turned the ball over 3 times. That probably won't happen again. But can the T-Wolves even compete now, Jordan, in this do or die game? Do you think they have a shot anymore?
Sure. And I want to get into something you mentioned, which is the starting five in a second, because I think that speaks to a theme I'm noticing in the playoffs overall. But yeah, sure, Minnesota could compete. They've got a game 6 home game. They've already beaten this team twice, but they have to figure out now what their counter is to Denver. Figured out its spacing. Yeah, they put the ball in Aaron Gordon's hands. People are making a big deal about it. But the bottom line is, if their shooters are shooting well and they're spreading the floor well, that is the antidote to Minnesota's too big system, which we've talked about a lot.
Yes.
So what's their counter move? Is it sitting? Is Gobert going to get played off the floor again? Are they going to play more Cat at the 5, Cat with Naz Reid? There's got to be a counter. That's what the NBA playoffs is about. Moves, counter moves. That's a 7-game series. So I'm curious to see what Minnesota does next.
Yeah, well, the answer isn't Jaden McDaniels.
Well, okay. So here's something I want to talk about, and I want to lead into it by first doing something that I almost never do, and that's say nice things about the Knicks. So we've talked about my history as a Knicks fan and then no longer a Knicks fan, right?
Sadly, yes. It makes
Right.
little sense to me, but what are you going to do?
Well, again, okay, so
What am I going to do, I should say?
I grew up a rabid Knicks fan, loved the 90s Knicks, even if they didn't play basketball the way I thought it was meant to be played. And then, like, early 2000s, a couple things happened. They traded Patrick Ewing, which was heartbreaking to me. This is right after I graduated college. I started working at the NBA and then at ESPN covering the NBA, editing NBA, etc. So I had to attempt to be unbiased. And while this was happening, while they started making every move was the opposite of what I would do if I were running a team, whether it was bringing in Isaiah Thomas to run the front office or adding Jerome James or Eddie Curry or Stephon Marbury or on and on and on. And they brought in such a litany of unlikable players too, that I just naturally gravitated away from them. And I had such a vitriol for James Dolan that I found I have never experienced this with any other team. I found it incredibly difficult to be a fan, and I've abandoned them for about 20 years. But Peter, this current group of Knicks, if you forget who owns the team, is so likable. They play so hard. They are so much better than the sum of their parts. I'm really trying to force myself into caring about them again. And I know you never gave up on them, so you must be enjoying this tremendously.
Well, objectively speaking, I gave up on them. You mentioned because they played not just bad, but dispiritingly horrible, like non-team. What do you call the opposite of teamwork oriented basketball? Dysfunctional,
Isolation,
isolated,
selfish.
isolation,
Yeah.
selfish ball for the better part. I mean, for like a decade. And you mentioned working at ESPN. When I was at ESPN, I ran something called the Ultimate Standings, where we used to do polls of fans and look at economic data and look at performance on the field or on the court, put it all together and see which teams gave fans the most or the least for the amount, not just of money, but of time and emotion that fans say they invested in their teams. And you can imagine the teams that did very well in this, teams like the Packers or the Spurs. The Knicks were down at the bottom, along with the Bengals and the Clippers. Like every year, there was nothing they gave back to their fans. But now they are giving superhuman effort. And it's analytically, it's even hard to track sometimes, because how much is that supposed to be worth? Not as much as it has been worth to the Knicks, right? The Knicks are showing how much it can be worth, and it shows up in things like offensive rebounds and plus minus sometimes, but it's showing up constantly for this group of Knicks. They're fun to watch precisely because they keep exceeding the expectations that any reasonable person has for them. And it shouldn't be lasting this long, but it has. Brunson shouldn't have been an MVP candidate, but he is, and he's the very tip of the iceberg. I mean,
so yes, this is the Underdogs podcast, and they are the ultimate underdog. I know they are the 2 seed in the East, but I was saying to a friend last night, any team that's healthy and talented and is losing to this Knicks team should be ashamed of itself, because it means they're being outworked. Jalen Brunson is the most unlikely superstar I think I've ever seen in basketball. There's nothing about him that screams transcendent player, and yet that's the way he's playing. They have 3 starters injured. Right. Julius Randle, OG Anunoby, who I love, Mitchell Robinson, plus Bogdanović. And they are still up 3-2 on the Pacers. They are
right. And then look what happened in this last game. Deuce McBride plays 40 minutes, scores 17 points with 4 assists. Precious Achiuwa plus 15 in 23 minutes. Alec Burks. I didn't know Alec Burks was still on the team. I remember they traded for him, but I thought he might have gone the way of Bogdanović. Who knew?
Yep.
Shooting 6 of 11, 5 of 8 from 3. These guys, after playing barely 5 minutes a month, come in and they freaking took it to Indiana.
And these are not like young players who suddenly developed. I mean, these are guys who've been elsewhere. No one found a way to use Josh Hart like this. Right. Isaiah Hartenstein is a revelation as a offensive rebounding machine, screener, defender, doing exactly what the modern 5 needs to do. Okay. You mentioned Achiuwa, you mentioned Deuce McBride.
Look, DiVincenzo has a championship. He was with the 2021 Bucks. He didn't play. He was hurt, but he's not anywhere.
He's another guy who was cast off by multiple teams.
Absolutely.
So my point is, this team is so much greater than the sum of their parts. And I want to talk about coaching for a second, okay? Because I keep hearing this nonsense. And Stan Van Gundy mentioned it last night about Tom Thibodeau playing these guys huge minutes and wearing them into the ground. First of all, nobody averaged more than 35 minutes a game in the regular season. Second of all, what he's doing with them in the playoffs is not unusual. I want to give you a few other team stats, okay? Mm-hmm. Game 4 for the Timberwolves. All 5 starters went 35 plus minutes, including Anthony Edwards played 45 minutes. And by the way, the Timberwolves were outscored by 13 points in the 3 minutes he sat, okay? The Nuggets are basically playing 7.5 guys right now. Brown and Justin Holiday off the bench. Game 4, Thunder Mavericks, okay? The Thunder played 4 starters 40 plus minutes, and the Mavs played PJ Washington, Kyrie Irving, and Luka Doncic 40 plus minutes too. And the Celtics, with a big advantage over Cleveland, still played Jason Tatum 44 minutes, Drew Holiday 43, and their 3 bench guys are Hauser, Cornette, and Pritchard. This is not exactly Bill Walton and Kevin McHale off the bench. The point is, it seems that people only pick on Tom Thibodeau for playing starters heavy minutes when it's happening all around the league and he doesn't have a bench.
All right. So look, let me say 2 things about this. One is, you're right. Thibodeau gets a lot of grief because he's known for playing players a lot of minutes in past seasons. But Jordan, concentrating your minutes in your very best players is a smart way to, it's not reckless way, it's a smart way to add risk when every game matters more. We see it all the time among other teams. We see it other. I remember Oral Roberts playing everybody for the best players for every minute of every game. That's how they won as a 15 seed. This happens. Now look, objectively speaking, analytics show you play a lot of players, a lot of minutes. It's going to lead to more injuries. That's the risk. You're adding risk to get significant reward. I'll tell you something else. If somebody does get hurt and you don't have, and you've been playing all your starters so many minutes, what guarantee is there that the guys who step in will play well? Well, that's what's happening with the Knicks. If Thibodeau weren't as great a coach as he's looking right now, those guys wouldn't be ready. He has players ready to come in. And I want to say one other thing about Thibodeau. You talk about work management, how many minutes people play. That's fine. It's not how many minutes Josh Hart is playing that has limited Halliburton, okay, to 9 shots in a crucial game 5 and 6 shots in a crucial game 3. I mean, the Pacers had submitted 78 foul calls for review because they're getting out coached, out strategized, and outworked. That's why they're losing this series. That's why they're a good bet to lose even when they go back to Indiana.
I want to say one last thing, and then let's move on to some baseball. What I've always said about depth, it's not how many guys you do play, it's how many you can play. I think the more important thing about depth is not rest, fatigue. Yeah, fine. I just never believe there's a big difference between playing 42 minutes and 34 minutes in a game. What depth gives you is outs. If your guys aren't playing well, someone else to turn to on a tough night. The Knicks don't have that right now. They don't have a lot of other places to go. But if all these guys were healthy, they would. So look, bottom line, Knicks are a fantastic underdog, and they've certainly made the case for why you should root for them. And by the way, speaking of underdogs who should be rooted for, we're going to give you the underdog division in baseball right after this. We're back. And Peter, I feel like for the past 20 years minimum, the American League Central Division has mostly existed as a punchline. It's like
it's been trash, Mike. It's been trash.
It's sort of like honestly, like in English soccer, it's like the championship division. Like, yay, one of you gets to win and be relegated. Someone's relegated and you get promoted and play with the big boys. But this year, first of all, we told you in the preseason that the Kansas City Royals were a sleeper team to watch. Well, they're 26-18, Peter, and firmly in the playoff chase. But they trail the Cleveland Guardians, who are 27-16. You also have the Minnesota Twins, who are 24-17, and even the Tigers are playing 500 ball.
Yes.
So, Peter, I'm excited. I think this division is for real and is going to get multiple teams in the playoffs.
It's fun. I mean, Jordan, there are fun with an arrow pointing up 500 teams, which is the Tigers. There are depressing 500 teams, right? like Toronto. There are bump along, sometimes up, sometimes down 500 teams, like the Mets on a good day, right? This team is full of this division is full of teams that may or may not be any good at the end of the season, like 95 win teams, but which are a ton of fun and which benefit from the wild cards and from having the White Sox in their division, so that they are all going to be in playoff contention, even if they're only 82 or 86 win teams.
Yep. So let's take it from the top of the standings. Maybe there's a couple bets we can make related to this too, and figure out, which of these surprising teams is going to be the biggest, best surprise. So the Guardians, they are, like we said, leading the division. They are not a fluke. They've outscored opponents by 52 runs so far. So
right. That's in between the Yankees Orioles and Baltimore's differential.
Exactly.
Right. I mean, that's amazing.
What's amazing to me is they're doing this even though 5 of their top 8 players in at-bats have on-base percentages under 300. Is it Bibee or Bibby? Bibee, right?
Bibee. Tanner Bibee.
Tanner Bibee, supposed to be a potential ace starter this year, has not lived up to expectations. Shane Bieber is hurt, and 2 of their 5 other starters have ERAs of 5.30 or worse. Peter, how are they doing this?
Jordan, you said they weren't a fluke, but they have the 7th highest OPS in the league while they're scoring the most runs in the league. Their top 5 players only have about 6 wins above replacement and change. So it's the talent spread out all over the place. but I don't think they're going to be able to sustain their level of offense because, I mean, I think they've been really good with runners in scoring position. They've been really good at little things, like getting hit by pitches, like getting runs driven in by sacrifice flies. But they're only sixth in the league in home runs. And so I actually don't think this is going to last. I love some of these players. Statcast and MLB just came out with new data about bat speed, measuring how fast hitters swing bats. For the first time, this data is available.
Mhm.
Stephen Kwan has the second slowest bat speed after Luis Ariz in all of baseball, but he always squares up. He always hits the ball in the nose. It's almost like he swings the bat so slowly that he can control what he's doing through the strike zone.
Hmm.
I would love to put a bet on him to win the AL batting title, and I think he's extraordinarily valuable. I'm not sure that, and also Jose Ramirez is going to come back. I mean, he's not going to have a 290 on base percentage all season, but enjoy it now. This may be close to the high water mark for the Guardians, I think.
Oh, does that mean you're leaving room for my Kansas City Royals, the team I picked as my sleeper team before the season? And they're right there, outscoring opponents by 45 runs. Bobby Witt Jr., Salvador Perez with a huge bounce back season. Is this sustainable?
So you mentioned the two big. What's amazing about the Royals is after being so bad for so long, is they're doing it with big stars. Their top five players, unlike Cleveland, total about 9 wins above replacement because they're getting great performances from Bobby Witt, from Sal Perez, and from a couple of pitchers. Right now, you would like the fact that they brought in Michael Waka, who's not having a great season. But
Correct.
we mention him because I'm responsible for the pop culture content on this show, and we
And you
like to
really want to say Waka Waka
we
Waka?
we we make Fozzie the Bear references.
Yeah.
We also make Shakira references, Waka Waka, but it's not due to Michael Waka. It's due to these big stars that are having great seasons. Cole Reagans, who I love, I mean, devastating slider, works all around the
Hmm.
zone. He has a FIP of 2.64, Jordan, while his ERA is 4.22. He's going to
Yep.
be even better the rest of the season. He's plus 1,300 to win the Cy Young Award. I like looking at him. And I think Michael Massey, they got Whit Merrifield. They handed Michael Massey the job. He had a 163 on base percentage in the month of April, but he has been patient. They've been patient with him. His walks are up, his strikeouts are down. He's driving the ball more. I think he's a player to watch. So I think they actually have talent to supplement the big performances they've gotten so far. And I like their chances. Sure.
Well, we're not
They're
even talking about their starting pitching beyond Reagan's. Seth Lugo has been what an
right.
unbelievable acquisition. 1.66 ERA, a whip below 1. They're getting the Brady Singer's best season so far, an ERA under 3. And Alec Marsh is pitching to a 2.50 ERA. So there's a lot of pitching there. They need look, if they're going to stay in it, they have to add another bat or two. Renfroe has not been what I hoped he would be. MJ Melendez, your boy, is still struggling. They
He's
need
hitting under
they need one or
200.
two more
Yeah.
hitters in that lineup. But Peter, they're still, I think, what, plus 500 to win the division. It still feels like a great. I liked it before the season. I don't even remember. The odds were a lot longer than that. But I still think that's a good bet to make at this point. Don't you
We
agree?
will know. We will know if the world has truly turned upside down and the Central is on top. If the Royals decide to add payroll or add a big bat, imagine if the Royals are buyers in a month or two. That'd be amazing, wouldn't it? That would be that'd actually be really exciting.
Maybe they can rent Pete Alonso for the rest of the season.
Oh,
Yeah, that hurts, doesn't it? Well, speaking
oh,
of pain,
oh.
there's your oft-injured Minnesota Twins, the third member of this trifecta. They don't have the run differential the other two teams do. They do have Ryan Jeffers. This a playoff team?
They're hanging in there, Jordan. They're hanging in there, and I think they are. Look, you mentioned a lot of pitching for Kansas City. The Twins have 4 starting pitchers whose FIP is 3.2 or better, plus
Mhm.
Simeon Wood Richardson, who's replaced Louis Varland. So they have an entire rotation of excellent starting pitchers. And here's the deal: they're going to get Royce Lewis back, and they're going to get Byron Buxton back. Now, I
Will
I
they, Peter? Will
I
they?
advocate for these two guys every year. These are the only two guys I think in baseball who could simultaneously be eligible every year for the MVP and comeback player of the year. But there's a lot of talent there that's just waiting to join the team. And Johan Duran, who hasn't given up a run since he came back. So I think that they're 3 games out, a couple of games out now. Plus they're still plus 135 to win the division. I think there's a value bet here which is that there's a future special where you can pick a team to win the division and the American League.
This is at DraftKings?
Yes, at
Okay.
DraftKings. They are plus 950 for the Twins to win the whole league after winning the division. And if you believe in them to have a much better rest of the year and be competitive in the playoffs, I love that bet. That would be a fun bet to make.
Well, I love you. Unfortunately, you can't do this at DraftKings, but you can at another book. You could parlay those 3 teams to all make the playoffs, which is possible with the 6 playoff teams now. I actually don't think the odds are good enough. You only get about plus 520 because it doesn't really, I guess the parlay generation doesn't take into account the fact that if one makes the playoffs, it immediately decreases the next team's chance. So,
Right.
but it might be, since we're rooting for our underdogs, it might be a fun show bet to make where we just throw $10 on all 3 of them to make the playoffs. But Peter, if you had to rank them,
who would you take 2 teams out of the East, all 3 in the Central, and then whoever wins the West?
maybe that might be the way to go.
That could be fun. That would be
It's hard
fun.
for me to not see, now that I think about it. I think the Mariners and Rangers are going to make the playoffs. I don't know. But Peter, if you had to rank these 3 teams in terms of ultimately at the end of the year, who the best of them are, how would you, when we look back, who's going to be the best, second, third?
I'd say Twins 1, Royals 2, Cleveland 3.
All right, and I'm gonna go Royals, Cleveland, and the Twins.
All right.
But
we should mention one other player from the Detroit Tigers who isn't even in the major leagues yet, but we like to do that. Jackson Jobe, the first round pick, 3rd overall pick in 2021. Like Paul Skeens in Pittsburgh, he's going to come up big league sometime this year, and he's going to be really impressive. 100-mile-an-hour fastball, 4 good pitches, outstanding athlete. Keep him on your radar screens.
Well, you know what else is on our radar screens right now, Peter? The PGA Championship, which, as you know, starts Thursday morning, like all golf tournaments do. Peter's like, I've got a great pick. I really think he's going to win. I'm like, oh, awesome. A long shot. He goes, yeah, Xander Schauffele. I'm like, really, Peter? The 2nd or 3rd best player in the world. Quite a long shot. So now that I made you throw that one out, we're at Valhalla in Louisville, 2nd major of the year. Give us a true long shot to win the tournament.
All right, just to be clear, I said I think he's going to win, as in picking one guy out of the whole field as opposed to a top 5 or 10 finish, because Schauffele's long irons are perfectly suited to this course, meaning pick him to win outright, okay? Which is plus 1,400.
That's what we're trying to do here, but it has to be a long shot.
Okay, all right. Well,
he's
then
not a long shot. I'm going to pick Scotty Scheffler. Great.
No, it's not Scotty Scheffler, who is the best golfer in the world. It's a golfer whose particular approach is suited to this course. Jordan, you know it's hard to pick golf champions because there's so much randomness. You wrote a whole piece about this for the Masters.
Right. I'm wearing my "You Can't Predict Baseball, Susan" t-shirt,
but you really
can't predict golf. Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
But we do know this, okay? I like to go back to basics. Valhalla is a long course, 7,600 yards. It has the 3rd smallest greens. It's going to reward guys who can drive the ball, but with accuracy. The metrics you want to look at are things like proximity of approach over 200 yards, or strokes gained on approach. And so I'm going with Wyndham Clark plus 4,000. That's my long shot pick. How about yourself?
Well, it's funny. We were looking at very similar things, not driving as much, but again, approach shots. So I looked at approach shots from 150 to 200 yards away from the fairway. Those shots will be at a premium this week. Also, strokes gained approach, as you mentioned. And there's a guy who is a super duper long shot who might be fun to put $10 on to win and maybe $10 on to finish top 10. That's Keith Mitchell. He's plus 13,000 to win, plus 900 to finish in the top 10. He ranks 6th at Data Golf in approach shots from 150 yards to 200 yards from the fairway. He's also in 10th in strokes gained approach. He's playing well. He's made the cut in 8 of his last 9 tournaments, including 6 top 20 finishes. So this is the Underdog podcast. Let's take a true long shot. Give me some Keith Mitchell, baby, plus 13,000.
All right. Well, I like his approach, and I like your approach. That's all I can say.
Thanks, Peter. It's made my day. I wish I were in Louisville this week to watch the golf. And, obviously the big storylines are going to be, can Rory end the 10-year drought? He's played well at Valhalla in the past. Can Scotty Scheffler continue to cement himself as the next Tiger Woods? But there we go. Wyndham Clark, we had him last year. Keith Mitchell, we've got him this year. Bet with us.
We're going to be right here watching the Knicks, Rangers, and your Minnesota Twins.
There you go.